Hey, how are you? I was just getting a beer.
Oh, hi.
Guys,
I didn't see you guys there.
good
How's
evening.
Hey
everyone
guys,
doing?
Dylan, grab the beer. Ale Smith, San Diego.
Nice.
sweet, almost local.
Yeah.
David, you're definitely the beer connoisseur of the group.
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
Yeah, I like to try to keep it as local as possible too, which is nice. I mean, we have so many great
That
local
is
groups. Local, I mean, San Diego is, I'd say California is local for me.
pretty good.
Totally. Matt, it's nice to have you back.
Yeah,
Where have
it's
you,
good
where
to
have
be
you
back.
been? Where have you been?
Yeah.
I
Well,
was,
first of all, welcome everyone to DJs and Beers episode
Thank
number
you.
17.
Wow.
And Matt, where are you from? Where you came? Where did you just come from?
I was visiting family and managed to escape Berlin for 10 days. So now I'm back here.
How does it feel to be back? Are you happy or?
It's good. I mean, we came back and it's just back into city life. So yeah.
So,
Same old,
so
same old.
I do want to ask Chris, and this is going to be
Yeah.
a very interesting conversation because we didn't really explore it on our group chat too much. But Chris had a show in Rome. But before we get the full details on what that travel experience was like, what that gig was like, what was it like to just go on holiday, to travel, not as a DJ, but as a family man, as a family guy?
Well, actually, I mean, my wife, she went to Croatia like over a month ago,
Yeah.
and her brother picked her up in a car. He came from Sweden, so this was just as the lockdown kind of, I guess, the borders opened, and then, I mean, I wasn't going to go. I mean, I had no intention of going. I was just going to be here home alone, doing my thing, working in the studio. But I mean, my wife was there on her own for the last 2 weeks with the kids, so it's kind of difficult for her. And at that point, the flights opened up, so there were direct flights, but it was kind of weird. I mean, going to Schönefeld, there was no kind of social distancing. There were a lot of things that I hadn't factored, like you have to fill in like an online form where you're going, sort of welcome to Croatia or something like that, and it felt kind of odd. The whole thing was odd. And then going to Croatia, I mean, this part of the country that we traveled to was empty. And I mean, it's July, it should be packed. So
Yes. How did you feel about not having all the tourism buzzing around you? Like,
I mean,
was that?
I think for some, obviously for the locals and for the people that rely on tourism as for the economy, of course they're suffering. But I think for people like my wife Eva, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, she said it's the best time to travel because there's no one there. So,
Yeah.
and I think this is what people are starting to realize, that I think if you can, especially people obviously living in Europe that can actually travel, maybe this is the time to go and see some places, because it'll never be like this again. You can really feel it in Croatia. I mean, there's no Americans, there's no Australians, there's just, it's locals. So
And what was sorry if I'm grilling you with too many questions, but I'm curious because I haven't
Yeah.
traveled for 4 months.
That's what we're here for.
What was the actual travel experience like? Like security, checking in, and then security,
it was
and then getting on the plane, like waiting to board, then getting on the plane, the actual flight, the kind of service that you had
so
on the flight.
Schönefeld was empty, and I think, as I maybe explained in the group chat, I mean, there was very little social distancing, and also it was a bit kind of worrying, the lack of kind of I think the staff didn't seem so bothered as well, like especially getting onto the aircraft. But I mean, I think the flight was half full. I mean, I guess these kind of flights, especially going to destinations like Split, I think they're becoming incredibly popular, and I mean, it didn't feel any different in any way. It's just that everyone's wearing masks.
Okay.
That's it. So
Well, that's good to hear that it wasn't drastically different.
Yeah. you just felt that I mean, you can definitely feel it in the airports. I mean, everything's shut. A lot of the stores are closed, and it feels eerily, weird. It's strange, So of course, I mean, in Berlin, like Schönefeld or even Tegel, these aren't large hubs like maybe Amsterdam, where Steve's from, or even Frankfurt, where Chris traveled from. So it's definitely different. And Berlin's always been, even though it's the capital in a sense, it's always, the airports are, as you know, very provincial and tiny. So. We don't have a lot of long haul flights anyway, so we've never had. So,
yeah. And Chris, what about your experience?
Hi, Mo. First of all, he's joined us.
Hey, Mo.
Mo, you're still muted, by the way.
Yeah, I was just trying to change things so you guys don't hear me on my settings here before we get going.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. I'm a little late.
Good.
Sorry, Ali. What was your question?
My question was, what was your travel experience like in comparison to Matt's as a DJ, and then what was the actual gig like? And how did you reconcile your feelings about your experience?
The travel experience was in a way weird because as Matt says, the airports feel different. It's much less going on. The shops are closed. The security, I thought actually initially the security would be not as crazy because there's less people traveling, but apparently it's exactly the opposite. So I had the police coming to me twice because of my equipment. I was traveling alone. So, and I have 2 bags, and they came for each bag. The same people came back and asking me basically the same questions again, which I found weird. It's like, this process that they have to go through. Where you're going, what is your purpose, what are you doing? And it feels weird because in the past, let's say 20 years traveling in Europe, you've never been asked these questions. You're just basically traveling through Europe just as you would travel through California. Nobody's asking you anything. You just jump into a plane and you go somewhere and you get out. So it felt way more being observed from each side. Everybody was looking at you, and everybody's kind of like, I kind of had the feeling, maybe that is self-inflicted, but I kind of had the feeling everybody is looking like, who has the virus here? Who has is this the guy who has the virus? Who is he who has the virus? Like, where are you going? What's your purpose?
It's got to be the guy with all the gear. He's got to have the virus, right?
Yeah. What is the guy with the gear doing here? Like, why is he traveling with
Certainly
the gear?
He's got the virus like in the gear somewhere. He's got to find it. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely got more. I got more slack. You say that, right? You got more slack for traveling with gear. So it was definitely a lot of questions like, why are you doing this? What is your purpose? What are you doing? And then you're saying like, I'm going to Italy to play at a party, and you're like, in Italy? What? And I have to explain that now too. I was booked in Rome on a huge terrace at the Palazzo del Congressi. Some of you might know that. It's these big buildings. When you come from the airport, you go to Rome, you pass by these huge buildings that I think in the 40s Mussolini had built, and they're quite huge buildings, and one of them has a huge terrace. And one of the promoters that we all know, Gianluca, who's always been running amazing and very let's say safe and good parties. He invited me to play there, and I felt, yeah, that's safe. That can be done. And the reason why it is safe is if you look at the numbers right now, and I just had a talk about this early on, that some people say like, oh, but wasn't Italy the country which was hardest hit and they suffered so crazy? Yes, they were. But because of this, they were the country which had the probably next to in Europe, at least, next to Spain, the most restrictive lockdowns. Just what I've heard of Paco Osuna, you were only allowed to go to the supermarket if you hold the receipt in your hand of the supermarket, and things like that. And I think the only logical explanation that their daily case count on the day actually I flew there, I think it was 150 new cases in the whole country on that day. Which is compared to the United States, which had at that day 70,000, is quite a difference. So I think because of that super heavy and restricted lockdown, they managed to really get those numbers down and get the virus spread very much under control. And this is why in Italy, the promoters are allowed again to have open air parties.
Was there a capacity limit?
I do believe the
established?
capacity limit was 1,000 people, which I would say the terrace probably can hold up to 3,000 people. But I would say that really doesn't make much difference because all these 1,000 people were on the dance floor, and it was exactly like always before. I'm not entirely sure what the restrictions or the rules are with masks for people who attend parties.
I didn't see any mask wearing in the video.
Yeah. I was wearing my mask.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask if it was necessary or not, but you know, I at least want to be a great example. And I wasn't even near people. Like the DJ booth was quite far away from everyone, and my light person was kind of like 2 meters to my left, but only because of the purpose of like I'm coming from another country. If I have anything in me, I don't want to give it to you. So I'm going to be wearing a mask no matter who's around me. But apparently there is not really any rules on that, or they break them. I don't know. The party itself was amazing. It was a great energy. It was, you could really feel that people were finally, I mean, I was not the first one to do a party. There have been parties before, so it was not a novel thing to do and to have for them. For me, it was. I was just like, oh my God, it's my first gig in 5 months in front of people. Like, this is, and I could.
How did that feel? Like, I
could dive way deeper into this. It's so interesting what your mind can trick you. I sit here in this room, like my old rave cave, and I play 9-hour gigs. And I don't really wonder or worry about one moment of what track I play next. It just flows, and you just sit there and you play. And I was standing in front of people, and I was like, I don't know, like, oh, what am I going to play next? What am I going to play next? I'm going to structure my set so everybody has the best possible time. And
it's like learning how to DJ before an audience all over again, right? Or getting
it may be a little bit learning, or maybe I have to. I would love to find. I would love to learn out of this lockdown and to learn from my streams as well. And I mean, we've all done some streams now. So I would love to have your perspective on that as well. But I would learn out of my streams that, don't get me wrong, audience, you're great, and I really react to you. But I would love to get into a state where I do play what I feel like I want to play, like in my streams, at the same time reacting to the people and like also getting this into consideration of what to play next. So it's a whole new learning experience. But all I can say, it was really great. The travel was weird, all in all. The flight was weird. It just everything felt weird about it.
What was weird about the flight? Just for all the DJs that are watching, that are curious, what the actual travel with equipment was like.
Well, first of all, traveling from Frankfurt to Italy apparently has the rule that you're not allowed to put any luggage in the overhead compartments. Meaning everyone had to check in their trolleys. You were allowed to put your laptop back or something in front of the seat. Luckily, I was sitting in the front and I didn't have to do this, and I could keep my equipment. But literally, no one had luggage on the flight. So and the boarding was kind of a process, you know, like it took very long, and the deboarding also quite a process. So everybody first sits down. Nobody's supposed to get up. You know, it almost feels like you're in an emergency situation the whole flight long. That's kind of how it feels like, you know.
Yeah.
All right, we're landing now. Okay, everybody stay in their seats. Everyone stay in their seats. And then it's like slowly like, okay, first row, you can exit now. You slowly take your stuff, you walk out. It just makes you feel weird. Traveling has not become easier. Traveling with equipment is going to be a mess in the future. I think it's not going to make things easier. Yeah.
I can't wait. Sounds amazing.
They do the announcements and say by row that who gets up.
Yeah.
Nobody's standing when the plane lands anymore.
Nobody. Everybody's just following the rules. Everybody sits down. Everybody. Do you remember that one time that I told you the story where we had this emergency on the plane? I think I told that story on the DJs and Beers episode. where I was listening to music and I didn't have an idea what they're talking about. And I just get up and I'm standing there like, why is everybody sitting? And everybody's like, sit down, it's an emergency situation. And that is exactly how it felt, just a planned emergency situation. It's like, okay, we have to do this now. And you're basically being watched everywhere. You're being controlled everywhere. You have to fill in papers, where you're from, where do you live, what's your phone number? And you kind of feel like you're giving away all your personal details here to anyone who's asking for it. Otherwise, you're not allowed to do anything. And that is a weird feeling.
And do you know, Chris, do you know how they did the ticketing for the party in Rome? I mean, does everyone have to give their name and address there, or is it completely just business as usual?
I honestly have no idea. I don't know about the technical details, but I would suppose that it's only pre-sale because it was sold out beforehand. And I do believe that if it's pre-sale, everybody needs to leave their details, so they can trace whenever. Because in the hotel everywhere you had to leave your details, not only by registering or checking in what you usually do, you had to fill in an extra paper. You know, where you're going to be in the next 3 days, so in case of an emergency, you can be traced again.
Contact tracing.
And I believe that's what they do in Italy, and I think Italy learned their lesson, and they're really, really, really good in what they're doing right now.
Are they doing that?
And by the way, if anybody's watching, thank you, Italy, for having me. It was so much fun.
But Chris, are they doing that in Frankfurt still? Because I mean, in Berlin, they kind of stopped that with the restaurant.
What?
You know, if you go to a bar or you go to a restaurant, you have to leave your name and on a piece of paper and all this kind of stuff. I mean,
good question, because I was just at a restaurant. Hi from Aurelia, by the way, she was just here, our booker, Matt's and my booker. And she was passing by Frankfurt. We had just had a dinner, and we went to this Greek restaurant on the corner, and I didn't have to fill in anything. But that could also be the case because they know me, because I live around the corner. I have no idea. Maybe the rules are more lax. I don't want to get the Greek restaurant in trouble now.
No, because since I've been back in Berlin, I haven't been asked to do it at any place that we've been to. So I guess they're relaxing the laws, I guess. So
yeah.
Chris,
but
before
guys,
we bring Steve in, I just wanted to ask one final question about your gig. Did you feel like that the crowd had a different enthusiasm, a different vibe than usual, or you didn't really notice?
The
Italian crowds are always like really.
Yeah, that's what animated. I say. The enthusiasm level in Italy is usually quite high, which is amazing. I believe I heard more chanting. Even there was a lot of chanting going on. So there must have been like something like at break. Sometimes people started to chant, and just like it seemed to be everybody was just really happy that this was happening, including myself. Yeah.
Wow.
But
amazing.
I think we should get Steven.
We should get Steven. Yeah, I hope he's been.
We should get Steven because he's been waiting for 20 minutes already, or half an hour. Our guest tonight, Steve Rachmad, also known as Starak or Ignacio, or he can tell us more. Let's get him in. Steve, are you there?
Are you there?
Am I doing this right here? Yes.
There he is.
Hello.
What up, Steve?
Hey,
Walk down, Steve. What's up, buddy? How are you?
good. It's actually my first one online.
Yeah.
I never used Zoom really before, so
nice.
First time for everything.
Well, you picked the right round to be the first Zoom meeting in.
Are there more? Yeah, I guess there are.
Steve, have you done any besides the I didn't get a chance to see it yet. Besides the Clockworks live stream DJ set,
The
that
Photon.
you did every day. Have you done any more or any previous to that?
No, I actually I wasn't really into the whole DJ thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
And
Well, be honest. Come on.
so it was hard. I refused many of them.
Yeah.
And it was just a weird time for me emotionally, and I didn't, even since then, I didn't check any promo things. It's just piling up. I'm just not into it. I mean, I can make music and all, but just somehow the DJ thing wasn't appealing to me, and that's why in actually the stream I did, I kept it really easy for myself and stayed in my own emotion and played my own stuff. to get into it, and so I didn't have to spend lots of time to check out new tracks, which I completely wasn't into.
Yeah. I mean, you and I spoke a few times. I remember where we talked about, our feeling, how we're coping with the lockdown, with being able to make music again or listen to music, and yeah, I think we were both in a weird headspace about it. And everybody's got their own. Sorry.
Many people are, I think.
Yeah.
I remember David in the beginning of the whole thing saying that he just wasn't able to make any music. I mean, I understand that as well, that some people just, you're emotionally touched, you don't know, you're insecure about your future and you don't know what's going to happen. So you're just not into it or you don't feel it. It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird because when I was younger and just getting into this, I was very insecure about my future. I mean, this feeling of insecurity is quite different than back then.
Yeah. I think we all never had this in this state before. I mean, we always have some sort of insecurity which is easily or more easily solved, but this is like your whole life or the whole planet is just one big question mark at this point. That you really don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I think there's also a sense of it finally for once being completely out of your control.
Yeah, it is.
You know what I mean? Like even in the past, being insecure about your future, at least you still had hopes and determination and some strength to push through and be like, I'm going to hustle, I'm going to make it. But at this point, you just feel like you're just completely handcuffed. There's nothing to do, you know?
Yeah, you can hustle, you can make music and push through, but I mean,
but that's the thing I'm happy
ever
about.
Come back, you know? It's like, what do? I guess you just keep going until something happens. If
that's all we can do, I guess, so far, and just don't get too in a negative stream and get negative. You have to stay positive about the whole thing, which is
meet once a week with your therapy group.
Definitely.
Well, you're not upset, and you have a weekly thing going on.
Steve,
I've noticed through this whole pandemic, it's been really helpful just FaceTiming and chatting with friends and just like sitting and talking. It's been incredibly helpful to push forward with.
It's funny that you said it because I actually never do that. And one of the things that I started doing during this period is online games. I never done that. So we set up a group with Joe Mill, Kari Lekebus, Dustin San, Benjamin Mull, and we're playing Red Dead Redemption. And we're Aussie, and we're just doing either fishing or just walking around and helping.
What kind of game is that? Is that an ego shooter?
It's a Western game. Cowboy. You sit a Western cowboy game.
Yeah.
You sit actually
you should invite
on a horse. And you're enjoying beautiful scenery because it's so well built. You have mountains, waterfalls, fields. It's so gorgeous. Just to sit on your horse and drive around is already very calming.
Nah, it's an Xbox.
But then with your friends and you all have your avatar and you look funny and you're just riding along.
And what are you doing there?
Sometimes we do a challenge and then you have to help someone out and you have to walk a distance toward scenery and then solve the scenery. And but yeah, I don't play a lot, so I don't have an upgraded horse. So usually my horse is the slowest. So when I arrive there, everything is already solved. So I just enjoy the scenery while getting there. Also, my horse has to rest. So sometimes I can't make it in time. But it's a funny thing because it's always the same story.
I just wondered somebody just tuning in and like, what, horses?
That's awesome, man.
I've heard of this game. Awesome. I never played it. I heard
if you have PS4, it's a really fun game.
I gotta hit up Zon to invite me to this group.
Yeah, Dustin's always talking about that game, but I don't even have a PS4, so yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So you have to have a PS4 to do that? By the way, what are you drinking? Cheers.
Actually, ginger beer, because I sort of don't really like beer. The only beer I do like is Corona, and it didn't feel like the right thing, you know? So that's
what Matt's drinking, though.
So I thought,
Steve,
this is already
ginger beer is fine. You have the slowest horse. You can drink ginger beer.
and it says beer on it, so
I love ginger.
I'm
don't
half.
worry.
It's half okay.
It's all good.
Good.
So Steve, you are, and I really mean this, you are one of the most humble and nicest guys who also have that legendary status in our industry. Take us back to like your roots. You know, what were those early years, those formative years, your formative years like in Holland? How did you get into the scene? What was the spark?
You mean the whole music thing, or just the whole house techno part?
Yeah, like all of it, you know, without going
Yeah,
into too much
so it's a
detail.
long story.
That's it. We're going to mute ourselves, lean back, and let you talk now.
Yeah, no, you know, it's nice to
Story time,
reminisce
Steve.
during these times. It's nice to reminisce about those early years.
Yeah.
To remind each other of why we fell in love with this in the first
Yeah,
place,
it-
and to give everyone a sense of longing and hope. You know.
It's a funny one because I got a DJ mixer when I was 12. And if I think about it, in this time, DJ mixers had DIN plugs to connect the turntables to. So basically, you had a MIDI plug, which was the connection for your turntable to the mixer, instead of the tulips that you have nowadays. And there was no headphone entrance in it. And I had this crazy idea that if you record something on a tape, you rewind it back, play it through the mixer, then it's mixed. I was 12, so I was rewinding the thing, recording the thing, and it, of course, it erased the thing and recorded the new part.
Yeah.
So I was very disappointed in the mixer, and then it's like, yeah, what's next? And that's when I started experimenting with the thing, and I had just one turntable and a cassette player, and you have 2 times the same record, and you just do something, you play them together, and all of a sudden they end up together and you have phasing.
Yeah.
That's how I discovered all this thing, playing with this stuff. But while it's going off beat slowly again, then all of a sudden it's 1 beat behind, like an echo, and so forth. You can do 2 beats behind. So that's how I learned mixing, and I was trying to capture that it stayed phasing in this kind of thing. So I was having a deck without pitch control, for instance, and I could only find a way to reduce speed. So what did I do? I would put the cleaning cloth of my glasses, I would glue it with double-sided tape on the deck. To slow it down, I would just put it on the record so it would slow down and keep in sync with the cassette player, so I could stay in the phasing.
Wow.
And if I would want to have it more slow, I would put a dime on it, or 2 dimes, so it would slow down a bit more. Mixing tape was also a different story, because by the time I knew mixing and no headphone thing in it, I was listening to the beat counts on the vinyl. So I would turn down the volume of the amplifier, beginning of the record, listening to the ticks, mix it in, and then open the volume, and then open the faders, and that's how I would make a mixtape back in the days. But yeah, I had to. There was no other way, so I had to be clever in things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then more came. Then I wanted to do remixes, because I was listening to all these mega mixes that people would do, like 100 records in an hour, and I was like, oh, cool! I wanted to do that as well.
I used to love those mega mixes. They
Yeah,
would
yeah.
like release them on vinyl. Like you could play a mega
Oh
mix,
yeah, I have few, which are
and you could
really
pretend
rare.
like you're the one doing all the cutting between different records. You know? Everyone's looking at you like, damn, those are some skills. But it was
Ali, did you do that, Ali?
I played a lot of mega mixes were really big at the time. And
No,
they
were
were,
you pretending? That's what I'm saying.
of course, yeah.
Like what
I'm
DJs?
still
back
still
then-
pretending to be a DJ.
Hey Steve, well, like what DJs back then inspired you to learn how to mix, though?
Funny, because we had, I was 12, so there was not, I couldn't go to clubs. I just had the radio. That time there was, house music didn't exist yet, so it was mostly like in the weekends you had Black Pilot radio stations that I was following. And there were some ones that did more wavy stuff on the Saturdays. So the weekends were for me like sitting at home with my cassette player, recording all this kind of music that you didn't hear on the regular radio stations. And as a little boy of 12, standing there in the record import store, it was called, and pointing at the record that I wanted to have. I mean, it was a funny time for me. Really exciting to be in an American import store, how it was called.
Yeah.
It was really something back in the days. And
Good.
yeah, the DJ, yeah, there was not many. The DJ thing wasn't that popular yet in that sense. You had radio DJs and you had guys that made mega mixes, and those were the guys that I was following, like Ben Liebrand. You had Peter Slaghuis, is the one that actually died. He was Hit House later on.
Wow.
And you had a few others. And for the rest, I was following a lot of the American things. Because I started, of course, like Ali said, with this mega mixing. I started doing mega mixes. And after this, I started to hear this Latin New York guys doing tape edits with stuttering and making beats with tape. And in the beginning, people said, "Yeah, they do it with tape." And I was doing it with the pause button, but of course, never really exact on the right point. And in the beginning, I was so young and I didn't believe that you had to do it with tape. I just couldn't believe it, that you had to cut the tape. And then later, I had to find out that it was really the case. So I bought myself a small Akai tape deck and I started doing these things. Got inspired by people like Latin Rascals, Chet Nunez, who did Mentronics. He always hired him. And I was buying the records just for the tape edits, just for the stuttering, and I was studying it, how they did it. And I remember that I was listening to a Chet Nunez track and I was breaking the record every time with every fragment that happened. And at some point I heard nothing. And I was like, he puts empty pieces in between stuff. So that was the gating effect. So you just put an empty piece. So yeah, I learned a lot from technically about this. And it was pre-sampler time. So basically we were making beats by cutting them with little
Actual
pieces
tape.
of things. And then looping the
insane,
tape because it was the only way. I mean, you could do a sampler, but you had to. We were talking Synclavier or something, which was $20,000 or something. So that was not for us to get. So you had to find different ways.
I was trying to do that with the pause button on the cassettes.
Oh,
I
yeah,
was
I
trying
did
to
as
create
well.
DJ mixes, pausing at the right point, and then if there was another song that I wanted to mix into that, I would.
Yeah, that's how I started. You needed a pretty fast or quick cassette player for it because it wouldn't work with all the players. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think like how back in the day, recording studios would record on tape, and there would be a guy that's editing everything together, literally cutting with tape, and cutting with putting it together.
I used to do that when I was 14, 15. I was hired by guys because they knew I was doing this. So I saw all the major recording studios in the Netherlands because of this. I was even in one of the times I had to sit in the studio, and in the other studio was a guy who had a 50-channel recording of a Prince live set. I was like, wow. I would run in and take the tape and run. I would have a special thing. But it was a special thing for a 14, 15-year-old boy to be able to be in this really big recording studios.
Was it like
Bolland and Bolland? Have you guys heard of this?
Bolland and Bolland, of course.
Alco, Amadeus and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Even their studio.
You're in the army now.
Yeah, exactly. They produced Bolland and Bolland produced that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
Was it like an internship thing, or were just hanging out in the studio?
I met the technicus of Bolland and Bolland. He was a DJ at the Escape back in the days. He was, for me, he was like, you had Ben Liebrand, who was the #1 in the Netherlands, and you had Rutger Kroese. He was for me the second. And somehow I ended up in Escape, and he was the DJ there, and I just approached him because he was doing mixes for Disco Mix Club, which I liked. This was a special, not an elite club, but it was just a club of DJs who did remixes on their own at home with the tape and with samplers. And because you couldn't release it, of course, like we have now, this rights thing, they just did a small amount for a members club. Usually those were clubs and DJs for radios because it was a package of maybe 100 200 euro, which or guilders back in the days. Which was not affordable in that sense for a lot of people back in the days.
Like a
What
promo.
year was this?
I think around probably around 85. Could be a little bit before and after that it started. Because I think in the States you had something like Disconnect back in the days, which is a similar service.
I think Danny Tenaglia was talking about that.
Sorry?
I was going to say, Steve. I mean, I think if I record shop in like the Netherlands or in Belgium, this is the place where you always find medleys. The medley culture was huge, I reckon, in Europe. More so than
back in the days. You had to be quick to have them on vinyl because they were basically illegal as well. Because they were not allowed to put any names on it because all fragments of stuff that you can't use officially.
Did you actually release any medleys then on vinyl, like these things?
Actually, I was always too insecure to send them out, so I never did. I still have a lot of them somewhere here stashed. Mega mixes and even mixes of 80s tracks that I did back in the days with the first Casio SK1 sampler and 808 that I had already, and 303 that I borrowed.
Wow.
When did you have your 808? Your first one? What age?
15.
Wow.
I was actually, I never forget that moment. I mean, I was into SOS Band and of course stuff like Planet Rock and Electro. That got me into this stuff, and of course Sexual Healing, blah blah blah. And I was a paper boy for many years, and I had my Christmas bonus, and I was biking into town and passing my favorite music store, and I see an 808 in the window, and I stopped and I went there. And it said 750 guilders, which is $250, I would say nowadays. So I went in and I paid 100 guilders pre-fee, a bike back home, got the rest of my money because I had my Christmas bonus, and that was my first machine.
Wow.
How was like when you've been listening to SOS Band and Planet Rock and everything, how was that feeling when you got home with the 808, you connected it and you heard exactly the sounds that they made those tracks with? That must be boof.
It was very unreal indeed. And I always expected it to be a machine that was like tens of thousands of euros. So when I recently looked at when the machine was released, it was not even that much before that.
Yeah.
So somehow I was really lucky because who finds an 808 for $750 or $300?
You still have that same 808 though?
Still alive. I mean, I threw it around, was angry with it, banged it, and because it wouldn't start or would just stop out of itself. And after banging on it for a month, I realized there was just a screw loose on the inside. So I had to re-screw. But it survived. I mean, don't try it with one of these new machines. I mean, if you drop it one time, it's dead. I really treated it badly. And I really banged on it because I was angry that it just stopped out of itself.
They sure don't make them the way they used to.
No, not anymore. For sure not. Really not. That doesn't exist anymore.
Steve, when was that era of the Roxy and Dimitri, the resident there? When did that start, and was that like a really big
the Roxy
hub for techno?
I was 17 then, and I always remember that I started going there when they declared acid house for dead somehow. I don't know why that was because I didn't follow it. So exactly that week was in 1987, and for me that was a big thing. I mean, I'll never forget that I'm standing in this big club, and the dance from Derek was played. Rhythm is Rhythm, and imagine that you never heard this kind of music before, and you hear this big bass in a big room on the speakers, and really like, wow, what's this? I mean, that's how this started for me, this whole house thing, to hearing this. unusual science fiction kind of music in a big club.
Mhm.
And yeah, that unreal. I mean, in a way, because it was also I was always an '80s R&B boy since the beginning of the '80s till basically the time the house came, because the '80s R&B started to divert into either hip hop or swing beat.
Yeah.
And I did follow the swing beat part for a while in the beginning with the guy and the Teddy Riley stuff.
Yeah. The
But
New Jack Swing.
somehow hip hop, I liked the grooves, but somehow it never attracted me. So that one was for me already a no-go that time. And yeah, swing beats, I was losing it because it somehow it started to sound all the same for me. And then all of a sudden, house music came. And also for me, because I was already doing music before house, but you needed major labels, and I was doing ballads, and it's of course 808 kind of beats, but there was always a culture of suit and tie connected to it. So for me, the house culture brought it. I could do it from my bedroom. So that was an easy step to make for me to step into it, and full control of your own music and what you want to do, and no guy breathing in your neck telling you how it's supposed to be, and all these rules and expensive hours in studios that you have to rent. Because that was the other thing. It was so expensive back in the days to rent a studio, maybe 400 an hour or something.
Yeah.
Imagine you have to do an album. So back in the days, you really needed those advances just for the studio already.
Do you think you always felt more comfortable in the studio more than the DJ role, or is there one that you?
Yeah, for sure. I notice it now already with this whole COVID thing. I think I'm always been more a studio thing, studio boy.
Yeah.
Had you ever make at some point in your life a career decision, like thinking like, okay, now I have to do something real?
Honestly, now.
Sure.
The first time.
No.
I never ever had to do that. But yeah, it was never so insecure like now. I mean, somehow I did only 2 jobs in my life, and it was a bar when I was 23, and for a while I did the bar and the record store, but then the music started happening and I dropped the bar. It was just for a while the record store, and that's it. Oh no, I had a holiday job when I was saving up for my first synthesizer. I worked at the airport catering service, doing really, what do you call this? A dead man's work. Like, this thing that's rolling, you have to put stuff on, and like. But okay, for a couple of weeks, I needed the money. I wanted to buy my first synthesizer.
So Steve, was it this influence from Detroit that first got you really like opened up your entire world in terms of electronic music, or were you ever into like the new beat or electronic body music stuff that was coming out of Belgium?
Actually, I was following everything, even the Rotterdam and the trance and the trance from back in the days, and there was something everywhere. Even the ravey stuff I always liked. And after buying a few records, I was just buying the records, and then you look on them after you have a pile, and then you notice, oh, I have a few of Larry Hurt. Oh, I have a few of Derek May, a guy called Derek, and you didn't know the guy. So that's how I started to get into certain guys and certain labels and certain styles. Because I think the first one that appealed to me was in '86, and I was still in the R&B mode, and it was Can You Feel It from Fingers.
Yeah. Which still sounds incredible to this day. I mean,
with the Martin Luther King speech on the other side, and a vocal version with what's his name that always was singing for him.
Robert Owens.
Robert Owens, which is quite rare. And like I said, back in the days, I was just going for this nice chords and this hollow bass line, not even knowing what kind of music it was. It just appealed to me, and I think that might even be my first house record ever that I heard and bought under that term. Because in a way, if I listen to Italo disco now, that was already a pre-house thing already.
Yeah,
listen to
for sure.
I mean, your album, The Secret Life of Machines, which came out, I looked it up in 1995, was sort of a landmark album for techno music, you know, globally, but like especially in the Dutch scene. And it's quite, you know, an emotional ride. You know, there's a lot of use of melodies and things like that. So were you always into melodies, into very musical compositions?
Yeah, I was an emotional boy.
You're what?
I was an emotional boy. Even in the R&B time, I was more really into ballads and nice chords and nice sounds. I was into Jam and Lewis because they had really nice compositions with their chords and really nice dreamy sounds, and that was always appealing to me.
Were you a musician at all before?
Heavy dark chords. Sorry, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you out. Were you a musician at all before, or you learned when you started? No?
I just noticed when, let's say at some point when I was doing this learning this mixing thing, then I heard these remixes, and then I wanted more because that's how it grew for me. It started with DJing, and then I wanted to do remixes, and then I heard people having samplers playing stuff. Then I had the money to buy SK1, the Casio sampling machine. And then I noticed I could play really easily a melody. Let's say if Janet Jackson was singing a melody, I could easily replay it. It took me a couple of minutes, but that's how I rolled into music. Because then you're remixing and you're like, no, I want more. I want to write music. And that's how it slowly started rolling for me.
So were you making stuff like SOS Band, like the No One's Gonna Love You, that kind of vibe? Were you making this Jam and Lewis?
Yeah, I was trying at least back in the days.
Have you got any of these demos still around?
Yeah, I'll have this on cassettes and things.
And have you ever thought about revisiting this sort of sound from that period?
Actually, yeah, I mean, I do many things all mixed up and things.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, I treated myself on an OB8, which was Jam and Lewis and Prince, their main synthesizer. Yes. And actually, I started the project slowly recording with only sounds from the OB8. So just audio recording them and then make a new sound and then creating a whole track and then use one drum machine. You know. But I did a few sketches, but never really got to finish it. But something for the future also, because it probably needs a singer.
Because the thing is, there's not so many people like produced. I think Larry Heard's probably one of the only guys that, or there are a few that kind of do kind of ballads or techno in a style. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have developed.
He's very good at it.
Yeah. But I mean, but I guess it's very niche, and like you said, unless you bring in vocalists or you.
Have you guys ever met Larry Heard? Have any of you met Larry?
I haven't, unfortunately. Oh, just a sec. Some light for you guys.
I met him years ago at a festival, and it was way outside of Tokyo. I can't remember the name of the city or the name of the festival. Really, really interesting festival. And he was playing, and I couldn't believe he was playing. And I made a point of, meeting him. For me, it was such a moment. I have like a really horrible blurry picture of it because I was too nervous and excited, to hold
like a fanboy.
Like the lighting correct and to hold my phone correctly. But that was wow, what a moment that was. I mean,
I had a bit of friend. Is one of my friends here, Jeroen, his mom, she was singing in a choir, and they had to travel in the States singing. And then for some reason, his mom ended up at Larry Heard's house.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, when he contacted me, he was like, hey, my mom, she's singing with the choir. She's staying at Larry Heard's place. For us, it was really like, what are the odds? No?
Amazing.
I think I read that he was, don't remember now, but I think I read he was a computer programmer, and he was just doing all this on the side. It was just kind of a hobby. He had like a good regular day job that wasn't letting go of, and he was still making these incredible, landmark albums and songs that influenced so many generations of musicians,
For me, it was probably one of my starting points. So usually I say Detroit, but it might even be Chicago, actually.
I was going to ask you, yeah. So getting back to the influence of American artists on you, like
Oh, big time! Already in the 80s. I mean, I was that boy that already at my 13th or 14th, I learned about American and European pressings, and I learned the difference in sound. So I was chasing the American pressings because they sounded so much fatter than the European ones that could sound quite flat. And yeah, of course, they were easy to recognize because of the round inner sleeve or the plastic outlay. But yeah, I was chasing usually the American ones. So that already influenced me there. I mean, back in the 80s, the standard was American music. I mean, a lot of their mixing, their anything.
Do you remember your first trip to America?
Yeah, that was during
and where you played?
EMF back in the days. And this guy Victor, he had something in New York at the meet.
Yeah, on Mondays or something.
He got me over, and I think Marco Carola he got over, and Christian Smith, or we stayed in his. He was living with Christian Smith back in the days.
Yeah,
it was a very strange, chaotic time because it was the first time in the States. And yeah, I think I didn't even see much of New York then because it was very.
Chris, it's that same party you played.
Yeah, as well. Really?
Yeah. It was the Monday. What was it called again?
It was a Monday. Indeed.
Yeah.
In the Sullivan Room, it used to be.
Yeah.
Parties, is it?
It was Christian Smith and a guy named Victor. Who were
It was Tronic parties, yeah.
But it was a different name. It was Mondays. Christian, are you not watching? Can you tell us, please, in the comments?
Monday
somewhere.
nights.
Steve, do you remember Satellite Records in New York? Did you ever go there?
I've been to one or two places, but I don't remember the names. I wouldn't even know to find them, to be honest.
I remember ordering from Satellite Records online, like in 98, 99. And like having to pay COD.
I remember when
your first time in Detroit was in the early 2000s for DMF?
Might even be 2000 exactly, if I'm not wrong.
The very first one?
Yeah. I was in the States pretty late, actually, compared to a lot of other artists. Already had tours and I've seen many places, and I didn't even have my first one yet.
Yeah.
Was that? I think the last time I saw you was in Detroit during Movement last year.
Is it really that long ago?
I think
you might be
the last time I saw you, Carl Craig took me to the Motown Museum, and we were coming back to the hotel because I was leaving that day in the evening, and he was dropping me off, and I saw you
you guys passed
around the corner from the hotel with Joel, and that was the last time I saw you. I can't believe it's been
a long time.
I think that's you came and played for us. You came to play that warehouse party we did.
It was your party.
Yeah.
It was the after party.
Connecting the dots.
And as David noticed on Twitter recently, time is flying, right?
Oh my God.
Oh, it is. It goes too quickly. Do you guys have it as well that you think 24 hours in a day it's not enough? You just want to have a longer day, a few more hours?
Yeah.
For right now.
Why does it? Yeah. Why does it feel like that? Why does it feel like there's not enough hours in the day now when we have all these hours?
Exactly. Yeah.
Why does it feel like there's not?
Because we're wasting
feel like we
too
get.
much of it.
I think we get sucked into the reading about the news, global events, our industry, watching the news, FaceTiming with different people, and then you turn around and most of your day's gone.
It's 5 p.m.
Extending the days, I think, because I barely sleep at night.
I think the other thing is just having to cook for yourself 3 meals a day. It's like
Matt, was it the same on holidays? The time flying as fast as at home?
Well, I was with the wife and 2 kids, so it went very quickly. It just it wasn't really. Look, it wasn't really a holiday. It's just a way with it was really it does fly by, but I think it's basically because we're getting older as well, and as you get older
You're at home
Totally
but in a different location.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve,
I
have
mean,
you
it's
been-
pretty.
Go ahead.
Sorry. We all know, Steve, we know each other for like, I think 20 years now, which is also insane in itself. You know everyone else since when about here on the show? I was just curious.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I don't know who's next that I met
When,
first.
when did you meet Matt, for example, for the first time? When did you meet Matt for the first time?
I have no idea, to be honest. Do you know, man?
I don't know either. I think we've met at so many gigs, I can't remember.
But same with David and Mo, I think.
Yeah.
I think I
Maybe
first met you in Detroit
must
or
be.
ADE, one of those. But I don't remember. It was quite a while ago though, for sure.
First time you came and
Really
played
also
for us
at
in
home.
LA at this really, really small club. It was a midweek gig on Thursday when we did Prime.
I don't even think I was there when I met.
Maybe it was 2008 or 2009, something like that.
Where was
But I
this?
remember the first time that I went to Berlin ever, like my first trip to Europe that I had ever taken. I was super excited because my entire life I've always wanted to go to Europe. And we went to Sonar first in Spain, and we experienced the festival, which was incredible. And then the second city we went to was in Berlin. And when I got to Berlin, somebody had come up to us one day and said, "Hey, do you want to go to this club called Berghain?" And we had never heard of it before. So we're like, yeah, sure, let's go check it out. This was 2006. And I walk into the club and I was blown away, and you were playing that night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was my first experience at Berghain, which was incredible. I'll never, ever forget that set you played that night. It was inspiring. It was incredible, and it was such a life-changing experience for me altogether.
That's nice. That was nice.
Wow, that is quite a story, dude. We could finish the show on that. Wow.
Steve, you said you said you were in those early days. You were more into music production and spending time in studios. When do you remember your first gig, and where was that? And did that make you want to pursue DJing right alongside the music production?
Yeah, it was like a local youth center, which had a Friday night, a few hours, where they did some disco thing with students or even below students. So there was no DJ culture yet, like started in the house time, let's say. And back in the days, I actually didn't want to be a weekly DJ in a club, because it was the times that I went, let's say a couple of times, you hear all the time the same records and a lot of times in the same order. And I was like, no, I'm going to get really fed up with my records if I have to play them at the same club every week. But then this whole house thing came, and you could spread it, of course, over different countries, which for me changed a lot, because it's different if you have to do the same thing every week in the same place. And this had more variety, that you could fly around and play stuff everywhere else.
And how many festivals were going on in Holland around that time in comparison to today?
I remember one time you had Dance Valley, let's say the week after. And there was one festival before in Utrecht. They basically asphaltized a whole football stadium, and they had a stage with Ronnie Size, and I was on a stage with Dave Clark, which I think I met him that time, but the first time. And it was also an awards thing for the Dutch music scene, and I think it was about 30 degrees Celsius, so really hot. And there were basically no people. So imagine that you have a lineup back in the days. You have Ronnie Size and Dave Clark and probably more guys, and there's a whole football stadium, no people. And why was that? Because there was a week later Dance Valley. It was not possible to have another festival in the same period back in that time. Not possible. You would not make it. But times change.
Now there's I mean,
there's a few on the same day, probably.
Yeah. Whenever anyone tells me how many festivals there are now in Holland, it's shocking, the number. You're like, whoa, all kinds of festivals.
From April.
Mo just brought in some boxes.
I did, yeah. I got a whole bunch of new gear for the studio.
You did.
Hey Steve, what's the? I know there's a million festivals in Netherlands. What's the most you've played in one day? Have you ever done like those
To be
crazy
honest, I'm
stretches?
really difficult on that one because when I was entering a bigger agency in the beginning here in Amsterdam around Christmas, that booked me fully around this Christmas time. And that's when I already immediately started losing it. I mean, I noticed that if you give me, the funny thing is, I was a big fan of Colin and Cisco. They had the Advent, and it was the last of the gigs that I had. I'm looking forward to it. It was at Melkweg's, the Advent Live. But I started first Christmas Day. I think I had, I don't know, 5 or 6 gigs in a row. And I was fed up with the last one. I didn't even want to do it anymore. And that's when I immediately said to the agency from, okay,
No more.
do a weekend. And is it more, then we have to discuss it, because don't just put me there, because I'm losing the fun in it. So I immediately stopped that part.
Because like I know there's a lot of DJs that, you know, when it's festival season in the Netherlands especially, it's like they literally, it's like they're playing, you know, like, you know, Benny Rodriguez. Man.
He loves that. He loves it. He can do 5 in a day.
On Twitter,
Well, we have him on the show in 3 weeks, so we can ask him.
Yeah, he's a monster. He's just going for it. He can.
Oh my God, I don't even. I've the most I've done is 3 in one day, and that was like way too much.
I think for me the same. 3.
But yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, going back to when you were producing stuff in the '90s, you were doing so many different aliases.
Yeah.
Was there any reason for that? Was it each one a different sound, or were you just like, I don't care?
It started as an exclusivity thing, because when I did Black Scorpion, which was my first one, I wanted to do a Black Scorpion with another label, but then the guy was like, "Oh, you have to do it with us." Then I was like, "Okay, but I want to do something with him. I'll come up with a new name." And after having to cope with this a few times, I started to, at least I tried to connect a style to
each
few
one,
of them, because some of them were just one-timers, but a few of them I kept. And
can you run down all the names? Ignacio.
Apparently there are 19.
Go on.
Well, you know what's funny is
Give
like,
us some.
There was this old record you did under this name Continuous Cool that I remember hearing it like '96. I had no idea until I looked up on Discogs, and I was like, oh my God, that's fucking Steve. Like, wow.
I looked, Steve, I looked you up on Discogs as well to see how many aliases you've had. And wow, A Scorpion's Dream, Adverse Match, Black Scorpion, Continuous Cool, Didato, Dreg, Esteban Del Monte, Flexible, Ignacio, Noma G.
Was under that name because nobody should have known that it was me.
But you've done a lot of aliases.
Yeah,
I think we all have, right? In our
no, you haven't.
Our evolution, right? No. Not as many as you, but like, what was the importance of having an aliases for you, as opposed to sticking to Sterak or just Steve Rachmad?
I guess because I grew up in the 80s with so many. I grew up with a lot of different music, and I guess with a lot of things I wanted to show a different side whenever possible. And some of them I wasn't too proud of, like the Continuous Cool ones. So I even came up with the Esteban Del Monte as the artist for that one back in the days.
Wow.
But yeah, most of them, they don't exist anymore. They were just either for fun or one-timers.
Now it's only.
I don't know, was it the anagram? Do you call it that? It is the Steve Rachmad completely mixed up in a computer, and then it was match. This kind of thing.
But now the Sterak name is more for the electro-y stuff, and just Steve Rachmad is more techno.
Steve Rachmad is more a general thing. Could be. But yeah, Sterak is then more techno, and then Sterak Electronics is really the more.
Electronics is the one, yeah.
And Parallel 9 is the more dub-related stuff.
Have you done recently? You haven't done.
No, I haven't done new Parallel 9s recently. hopefully soon.
I really loved all the reissued Scorp tracks on Token you did.
Oh man, the Scorp stuff is incredible.
I mean, I was playing a few of those before it was reissued, but
yeah,
it's still a solid package to put together.
Yeah, it's nice that they wanted to do it, because also a lot of people were requesting them to having them digitally, and it was a good way also to explore them again and do them digitally.
Actually, to be fair, the ones that I was playing might have been ripped from vinyl, and I'm pretty sure David probably ripped them, maybe.
Yeah, they're all vinyl. The ones that were all vinyl rips. That's it. I mean, I do them all the time, so there's no other way, you know. Did you have like all the original like DAT tapes, or were they all just ripped from vinyl and remastered?
No, I have all that still here.
Nice.
And actually, Music Man still had them there as well at the office.
Wow, what a label that was, Music Man.
Does Music Man still own a lot of that stuff? Or is it like kind of you can get them and re-release them and master them, or?
Yeah, actually, I mean, the Scorp thing was more like an outlet for me that I could just send the music to, because I'm not into the business side. I don't want to arrange mastering and take care of pressing and blah, blah, blah. So for me, it was just I could spit out the music and they would take care of the rest.
Yeah.
But like if you want to...
They licensed the tracks, basically. They were never owners, actually. They're one of the few labels that do licensing with tracks for a couple of years.
So you could technically get like an old Ignacio record and re-release it yourself. Oh, okay, cool.
I have the rights for all of this stuff.
Oh, that's good.
Steve, how did the release in '99 on Amplant came about? The Nemec, the Sterak release, because that was a record which was, I mean, before I knew about you, but that was a record which I held in my hands. Was like I was playing this like insanely crazy, and actually at that time I thought you were American still. So how did this Amplant release came about in '99?
Yeah, that was for me. I mean, it was probably how I would go to work back in the days, and I had the same with Derek. Somehow I got to know Derek because he lived in Amsterdam, and I was there with a cassette at his doorstep almost every week, because I wanted to be on his label. And I had the same with Robert Hood. I mean, I was like, okay, it's one of my favorite labels. I want to be on it. Yeah. So I made sure that was going to happen. And whenever I had tracks that I was like, okay, this might fit, I was sending them over. Actually, yeah, that was sort of how it went.
So you knew where Derek lived and you were going...
Yeah, because I worked at Outland that time, Outland Records, and they knew him, and Dimitri and stuff. They were very close to him. Dimitri was always the guy that got all the dub plates from Derek. So he always had stuff like Atlas and all these things. Acid Eiffel, he always had way before anyone else.
Yeah.
So that was they had a special relationship. So that and then he lived 5 minutes away from Outland Records. So.
Yeah, I remember like one of the reasons that I decided to continue on this path of get electronic music and all that stuff was my first record with Sharam. The very first one got licensed by Outland Records in 1993.
Which one? Oh, wait.
Yeah, Moods of Feeling. And we couldn't believe it when we got the fax. We got like a fax asking us if we wanted to license it, and then we didn't have a lawyer. We didn't have like any of the inner workings of the structure of a label setup. And that's when I met our longtime lawyer, and he did the deal, and we got copies of the record, and the artwork was really iconic.
Yeah, it was the Dada thing probably.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't remember the name of the artist, but it was super iconic. All the records.
The colorful stuff.
Yeah.
Which record was it?
That was Moods of Feeling in 90. We released it in 92 or something, and then it came out in 93 on Outland.
Probably that was because you were asking about Dimitri in the beginning, and that was probably the effect of Dimitri, because everything he played at Roxy, somehow all the DJs were behind him looking like, what is this? And this is how this kind of deals came along, that Outland saw like, oh, this is a record that will sell, and then they would license it and probably do remixes with it and blah blah blah.
Wow.
So like when you first started DJing, like what were the first clubs I'm assuming it was in Amsterdam, right? Was it like what were the first clubs you were DJing at?
That's a good one. Which club was that? Because it started with parties. I think. Oh no, there was one club where most.
Well, yeah. How did it start? What, like you said, parties?
It's
like warehouse parties or?
No, there was one club because also Dimitri started there, and I think one of our first house DJs, Eddie de Klerk, he's actually the one who brought house music, or one of the guys who brought house music to the Netherlands. And they all started in Apkoude at a place. And actually, somehow the guys that lived in that town started booking me as well. So that was also my first. I forgot the club. It was a small place, but of course famous for having people like Dimitri, but also Billy Nasty played there, and Mr. C.
Oh, nice.
It was for a small town like that, close to Amsterdam. It was pretty happening, let's say, back in the days, because normally that wouldn't happen in a small town. So.
I'm sure people are still playing, like young DJs are still getting their start by playing house parties to this day.
Especially now, right
now. Because what I'm doing, people are setting up parties in the garden, or how do you call it? If you have a big shed or something.
Yeah.
And they put money together to get a DJ over for a few hours. I mean, it's the only thing that can happen here now, because nothing is allowed.
I'm playing another house party on Saturday. And actually stream it too.
I think I heard that, I remember reading that Holland was one of the first countries to sort of announce that they were not going to allow any large-scale music events for the rest of the year. And Matt, thanks for I think you sent that article, which I just read before we got on today, about this experiment that's happening in Germany. In Leipzig, where they're doing a concert and for about 4,000 people, and it's kind of a controlled experiment because they want to see the impact that it's going to have. You know.
I mean, they're doing. There's this
infection-wise or impact.
Matt, can you tell us about that?
Well, basically, I think they're doing an experiment to see what the effects would be if a coronavirus. I guess it's completely controlled and monitored, and what would happen. But there's just with in the Berlin area, there's 1,000 capacity rave that's going to happen near Brandenburg, I believe, soon. But it's I'm not. I guess it's 200 euros per ticket. Wow. And I guess it's going to be very spaced out, as in the area is huge. I'm not sure how they're doing it, but I think all these things, like Chris was explaining with this guy from Stuttgart, I guess what they're trying to do is trying to see if they can do events where they can monitor the people through ticket sales and see the effects over weeks to see what happens if it spreads and things like that.
Yeah, I think they're doing 3 shows. One is for 4,000 cap, and you know, they give out hand sanitizers, and using UV light they can kind of track you know, what surfaces people are touching the most, and
quickly short stop.
And
a test route.
And then they're doing like a second one with the same amount of people, but with more entrances and some social distancing guidelines. And then they're doing a third one where it's capped at 2,000 people, and they have strict social distancing protocols in place. And, you know, this is a great example of German engineering and efficiency. It's like, in comparison to,
I think
in America.
I think people are willing to give it. I think they're trying, but whether it's going to actually change anything, I very much doubt it. From talking to people, I went to Berghain, to the beer garden today had a meeting with some friends, And you know, everyone's pretty adamant that nothing's going to be open till next year. So
doesn't all that seem like it's like more trouble than what it's worth for
exactly,
now?
exactly. But I mean, I do understand the idea of the whole idea of testing, because even if things do get kind of back to normal, I think the playing field will be completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously with Chris's gig, it would seem literally that, I mean, we saw that from his video, that people, it's just like, it's back to back, you know, here we go, everyone's raving, and there's no social distancing. But I'm not sure, again, whether in Italy, from talking to some promoters and agents there, whether this is like maybe some of the gigs that people are doing, whether it's in the south of Italy, this is just the guinea pigs to see what will happen, because you know, you never know in the next month whether everything will be closed down again, whether it'll be shut down. So maybe they're just it's a test, isn't it? I guess we're all testing the environment.
I don't think you know, we don't know if there's going to be a vaccine, so all this is information gathering to see if we're able to, you know, restart with, you know, specific measures in place that'll ensure the safety of everyone.
I'm actually playing another gig in south of Italy, in Gallipoli, on August 14th.
There you go.
Open air again. So I'm testing. I'm part of the testing, I guess.
Like a giant lab.
Part of a big guinea pig here.
Steve, what was your last gig, Steve, before all this happened?
Weeks ago in Split, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had my basically the first and last one, basically.
Oh, in Split.
Yeah. But
how was that?
But I understood now it's closed down again. It's called Orange by now.
Yeah.
So what was that like? Anything?
That time that I was there, people were just normal. I mean, it felt for me good to be at a place where everything felt normal. You didn't really see all the things outside or restaurants being...
It was an outdoor event?
It was an outdoor event on a small island. You had to go there by boat. So that was all good as well.
And how was the travel part?
Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
No, I just say, how was the travel part of it? Like going to the airport and all that?
Yeah, that was for me the worst part. Like Chris said, I mean, it starts already from going by train there with this thing. You enter the airport and of course it's empty, and you hear this mantra the whole way towards the plane, even in the connection between the plane. You have to keep distance, blah, blah, blah. Then you turn to the right and you see people sitting 3 by 3 on the plane.
Yeah.
And the stewardess dares to say, while you sit 3 by 3, when going to toilet, please watch your distance, he's saying. I felt really that I was being fucked around with. I mean, what are you saying? I felt really like they think I'm crazy or what? How can you say that?
Yeah.
So
did you say anything to them?
It was a ridiculous thing. Then I started thinking, like, is the government that silly that they would risk people sitting so close to each other for money, or for would the government do that, or either the flight company, would they do that? I don't think so. And I don't know, but now I just felt tricked, you know. I mean, the whole way, and everybody's really stressing, and then on the plane it's okay. And there's even a break when you get your food. You can take away the mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Someone made a joke like, "Oh, bring a whole big bag of food so you don't have to put it on at all." yeah, the point.
That's the issue they had, I think, in Disney World in Orlando. They opened it up and they said mandatory masks unless you eat. And so everybody was constantly eating pretzels. And until they found out about the loophole and said, like, okay, you're only allowed to eat in certain areas.
I mean, of course you're gonna eat.
But maybe we should go to better times, back to better times. I wanted to head back to like 99 and 2000. I started a monthly night in 2000, which I ran for 7 years in the U6311. Steve, and you were a guest multiple times because that was my way to meet my heroes back then. I just booked them, and I forced them to hang out with me. I guess that's how I met all of you. And
but it was amazing.
let me show you some.
I mean, you know yourself, it was great. I mean,
hold on, I actually got some pictures here. I can show you. There's Steve DJing and I forced him to wear a sleeveless white CLR shirt. That must have been in 2000 something. Above there we have a very young Adam Bayer and a very young Speedy J.
They look like gubbers.
There's a young me. And then we have another picture of Steve with Jochen.
Oh, dope.
Yeah, that was
Is that a Cosmos?
It's a Cosmos.
Yes.
It's a Cosmos shirt. Actually, this is a thing I want to say thanks to Agi and Artur. These are two heavy followers of the electronic music scene who were present almost at every gig in these 7 years, and they made this. They made this with all the pictures with all of us, and I'm so happy to have this now. And I can always.
I think I remember him before.
He looks familiar. Is that Ben?
That's Ben Sims, yeah, down here.
Yeah.
There's Jochen Speedy J playing live.
Those Yamaha samplers.
Yeah, we
the Yamahas, yeah, too.
There's a collapse gig, but it's too dark. So how did you experience these times back then?
I mean, these times.
I mean, especially thinking about this back then, like around 2001, 2002, 2003, between 2000 till 2007, when we played quite a few parties. We even did a bus tour together, the CL Retry tour. Remember that?
Yes, it was really cool.
It was fun times. But now I'm realizing you're really into melodies and everything, and we're just playing these like 144 BPM relentless techno loops. How did you experience that time?
I mean, that was the time for it. It was exactly the time for it. And like you said, I mean, you had already your guests that you invited, usually, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 on a night. But I then also remember at your house, you would also invite all the guys that were in town playing somewhere else just to hang out before the gig. So then Sven Veld would be there, and who else was in town? There was always a lot of fun and people meeting. And that's how I also met some of the guys that are running Time Warp now, because I never met those guys before. And it was a fun thing to hang out and have some food, some drinks, some smokes, and then go to the party and everyone go their own way to their own club and hang out.
Is this around the time when
something else as well? The bus tour was really special in this old rock bus that we had.
Rock and roll.
You have to think we had a rock bus which was driving us around, and it was like basically Steve Rachmad, Adam Bayer, Gaetano Parisio, Marco Carola. Who am I missing?
Rush, but he was not going with the bus. I think he was
right. DJ Rush was not with the bus, and myself, and we had this bus, and we were just basically going to clubs in mostly East Germany. No, we were in Nuremberg as well, and in Munich, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
2003.
That time when this Analog On record came out.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. That's like around 2003. Good old times.
Hey Chris, but what was CLR Retry?
It was basically the remix series. I didn't want to call it remix. I felt more like I tried to make music, and I asked others to remix it, and so I called it a retry.
Okay.
It's pretty smart, huh?
I thought it was you trying to revive the label or something. That's what it sounds like.
Really? I had no idea.
It sounded like you were just like, here's the retry of CLR.
Chris, were there before you settled on CLR? Before you settled on CLR, were there other names that were in the running for your label, or was it always CLR? Your name?
Oh my! Actually, my favorite label name ever was my first techno label. Like my first house label that I ran together with Tony Rios and Andrew Wooden was called Soap Records, because we couldn't think of a better name, and it was Soap. And we actually quite had some releases on there. It was like we had one really nice one, Noosa Hats with Marshall Jefferson, which was called Mushrooms. And Marshall spent a week, that was in '96, he spent a week at my house, just sitting on the couch, basically.
Did that come out on your label first? Because that was I think there's a Salt City Orchestra mix of that. There's
a Salt City Orchestra mix that became actually quite big, and we worked a lot with George Acosta, but that's why I did a Planet Soul remix for Strictly Rhythm and stuff like this. And then actually I started my first techno label, which was my absolute favorite label name ever, and it was just called Audio.
That fucking label kicks ass, dude.
I hear Audio, like Latin. And because it was too short, I called it like Fine Audio Recordings. But sadly, and this is why I felt Steve earlier on, like I'm not a business type person, and I'm not like really familiar with all the contracts that you have to sign. I had a distributor who like was helping me with this label, and I signed some papers. So when I left that distributor, he was telling me like, dude, the label is ours.
Wow.
I'm like, what? And I remember that was in 99, and I went over to Prime Distribution, with Steve remembers too, Prime Distribution, and probably some of you remember that. It was quite really the most impactful techno distributor, and I wanted to take my label over there, and my other distributor was like, no, this is our label now. And so I already had the first release lined up, and I couldn't continue my label name, which was completely sad for me, because it was so simple. It was just black shirts with Arial bold audio written on it.
Yellow.
Simple and effective. And then I had to come up with a new label name within a day, because we had to go in print and everything, and I just like was failing everything, and I just like, let's just call it Chris Liebing Recordings. And I always hated it because I didn't want to have my ego in the label name somehow. I didn't like that, the CLR, like this is about me, and this is like negative ego, which is as bad as a positive ego, I think. And then I kind of turned it around by saying it's not standing for my name, it stands for Create, Learn, Realize. And that's kind of like how I got out of this ego thing there. Yeah. That's now a little recap label. But I'm planning to restart it. I'm saying it here right now, and it's already in the works.
Wow.
Whoa.
Is the C going to stand for COVID?
And Steve had an amazing release on that on CLR2, actually as drag.
I think maybe the hardest one I ever did.
And you know what you sampled? I never forget, you sampled Running Up That Hill from Kate Bush.
Wow.
Such an amazing record.
Yeah, what record was it? He used it a lot in.
I love that song. What part of that song did you sample?
Oh, just the drum loop at the beginning.
It didn't feel
Dun, 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 dun,
somewhere in the
dun, dun,
break.
yeah.
And then I looked it.
Yeah.
What was the name of that record on CLR?
It's by Dreg. And what was the name actually of the track? Because we never really had track names.
No idea, to be honest.
Oh, the
DREG.
Filter
Maybe
Madness.
somebody can Google it of the people that are watching.
No, I remember, because that was like the Schranzi kind of track, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was just a kick and the loop and
Just like
going through a Sherman filter.
145 BPM.
Yeah.
And sorry, maybe we should also include our audience a little bit, because they're like commenting like crazy in my YouTube and my Facebook channel. I'm not sure how it is with your channels. Hi guys, by the way, we know you're watching and we know you're commenting, and we start to check your questions. Maybe if you have some questions for Steve Rachmad that we're happy to answer. But I want to quickly come back to one thing, Steve, what you said earlier, because that still rings in my head. When you played the Photon gig, you were struggling to go through promos to find new music to play. Yeah, currently, like in these times, I kind of feel the same way. I'm just really like, I have to force myself to listen to music. I'm so dependent on the guys here to send me music, especially Matt. He's the machine with the Radio Slave remixes and releases. Everybody who watches my streams probably noticed that every second track I play is produced by Matt Edwards right now. And Matt, it's because your tracks are so amazing, but also because I'm not really looking for other tracks. So it's really hard. So my question to the audience, which you could put in the comments, please, is when we guys play for you out there, do you actually notice if we're playing old tracks? Do you really notice if we're playing stuff three times, four times? Because my benchmark, and everyone else can answer that question too, my benchmark to playing old tracks is always, am I sick and tired of playing it? And not, are you guys sick and tired of hearing it? And sometimes you playing them, you don't get sick and tired of it, but you maybe at some point have some people in the audience, are you really playing that track again? Really? Can't you find some new music right by now? How important it is for you guys out there to have that the DJs have constantly new music. And I would love you guys to put some comments in. That was just my rant right now.
And Steve, I want to ask a question.
For me, I don't care at all.
have you been making any...
whenever it's from, and if I like it, I play it.
That's awesome. I feel the exact same way, man.
Have you been making any new edits of old
Me?
stuff? No, Steve.
Oh,
I did, but I have to redo them because I don't like.
Because you were doing one of Queen, right?
Yeah, and I tried it, but I was not happy with the sound yet, so I'm going to redo the mix.
Yeah, because the Frankie Goes to Hollywood one still is incredible.
Even that one, because that one you have is not mixed; it's just an Ableton bounce, and I was planning to at least put it on the desk and beef it up a bit. But
yeah,
I will do them probably in the same take.
So so during this time, have you been making a lot of music? Then have you been making loads of...
The funny thing is, since December, I have this deadline on a project called The Outlaw Ocean. It's actually a book written by Ian Urbina. He's a journalist of the New York Times. And he wrote a book about everything that's bad on the sea. So from illegal drilling for oil, piracy, people smuggling, illegal fishing. And he went on trips and he wrote a book about it. Very interesting read. And he asked about 200 artists to contribute to the book for one of the paragraphs. And that's what I've been doing the whole period, because I had a deadline, but somehow I couldn't finish this. I couldn't make the deadline. I was just going through a lot of things and was not able to finish it. Well, I had most of it ready, but some of the very emotional and simple parts that I'm usually good at, I just couldn't get it out of my fingers somehow. But parallelly, I was able to at least make a lot of sketches, because I made so many sketches next to that, which was for me very double. Like, on one hand, I'm not able to finish this, I couldn't. But a lot of new ideas on the other side. So actually, I did a lot of things in this time, from electro to just name it. And even my cousin was sending me or my niece was sending me some vocals, and I made some music around it. And somehow I was, of course, looking into what's next, what happens if the whole thing explodes, this whole life we live. So I was looking, what can I do? And somehow I got drawn into scoring for games and movies. So somehow this attracted me and I got into it. So I'm all the time on YouTube learning how to do it, but just the classical part of it. So how to arrange an orchestra and strings in a more realistic way. So I'm just focusing on this kind of things, because somehow I feel it's pulling me that direction in this period. So that was.
You're not alone in that at all. I've also been drawn in the exact same same environment, and I've been fortunate enough to land a few gigs. But I think it's an incredibly inspiring field to
yeah, it is. Yeah. But also for me, because I'm picking up musical theory again, and I wanna be able to know the chords already before. When you name them, that I know them already, because that's what I noticed from seeing these movies. You see these guys playing, and you see that when I hear the name, they know it, and I'm jealous. I want to know that as well.
Well, I'll say for me,
I'm trying to learn the piano hand as well, because, of course, I learned myself playing since I was 14, and play the wrong way. So sometimes I have cramps and I'm crossing and blah blah blah. So now I have to unlearn what I've been doing for about 40 years.
Yeah.
I have to unlearn, which is really hard now because I'm really having difficulties how to officially put the hand of the piano hand, let's say. Yeah, but
rewriting muscle memory, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like punk rock. It's the lack of musicianship, I think, that created all these special records, you know, all these special moments.
So
Yeah,
I was
never
gonna
learn
say,
chords.
one of the
Now
things
I'm
that I
learning.
found really inspiring about this whole pandemic was the fact that spending all this downtime we have learning new techniques as much as possible. I mean, I have, you know, everything from even like picking up new guitar licks to reading
nice.
more about production and mastering and mixing techniques and anything I can, just soaking in information.
Yeah,
as it's
same
fun,
here.
because what else do we have time to do but just learn? You know?
Yeah. I made so many playlists with all kinds of stuff that you're describing, like mixing techniques, but scoring techniques, all kinds of things, just based on logic, based on native contact, a lot of things that I'm just sucking in. Exactly how you say it.
Absolutely. Even if
May
it's
I
not
throw in-
music wise, like even if you're just learning Photoshop or video
Yeah.
editing, just anything, you know.
Steve, do you feel like
May I-
that, you feel like
Sorry, may I-
learning?
Oops.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw in that Martin Borschel in my comments just said that your track was called Filter Madness.
Uh-huh.
You remember that?
Yeah, David had it.
Oh, he said that?
Yeah, he
Sorry,
said
I missed.
You're like 10
David helped us
I
out.
wasn't multitasking here.
Steve, do you feel like the technology that's out there these days is drawing you back in? Is it stimulating your creativity
And the
once
funny
again?
thing is, I mean, I was never really into samplers at all. Always synthesizer, and but somehow I'm always drawn into towards string, like orchestral strings.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, one of the guys, Starsky Car, that I'm following, doing synth reviews, was all of a sudden reviewing a Star. He had the Star Wars theme made with a sample orchestra. When I heard this thing, I was blown away. It sounded so real. So actually, from the moment that I stopped really caring about samplers till now, all these years, so many things happened and they sound so realistic. And that's how I got drawn into this whole thing, because I was like, wow, now it's really, if you would hear the orchestras now, it's even how they are mixed and recorded, they are already at the spot that they are standing, if you would see an orchestra. So if you would play them, the bass, let's say, it is already on panned to the right. And even they sample the whole sound of the room. So you hear a whole orchestra in the room itself. So it's a whole new thing compared to sampling when I started. So somehow lately I was more into sampling than into synthesizers, actually. Of course, I'm going to combine them and stuff, but now I'm just learning how to do more realism in these samples.
And Steve, do you have a favorite piece of gear, like all-time favorite piece of gear that you will always go back to? Or
Good question. I try to swap around, but
or a favorite keyboard,
the go-to
maybe?
thing is always the 909. I can't help it. Not even the 808, because I know a lot of people say the favorite machine is an 808, and usually I say it as well because it was my first machine, and I can't really.
But do you have a favorite, like a keyboard, like a Juno 106 or pad sound that you like? Something.
Yeah, at this moment I have to say, because I have, when the moment that you have too many things in the studio that you not really know. Yeah, I guess the OB8. I still have to explore it more.
Yeah.
But you might know the record Bounce, Skate, Rock and Roll from.
That's Von Mason. Yeah, he's from DC.
I was playing. I was doing this project that I was telling you about with the SOS band kind of things, and I was playing a bass, and then I was tweaking the knobs, and all of a sudden I had that bass sound from Bounce, Skate, Rock and Roll. So I was like, whoa! I always wanted to know where it was from, and it came from an OB8. But I didn't save it. I didn't know how to save it yet. But I will find it again. I just at least wrote down which sound I used to make it, so I will find it again. So.
I've always, on the technical side, I've always been very curious about the way you produce your tracks. I mean, do you arrange stuff in a computer mostly, or are you kind of like more mixing down live and like?
It's a bit of both. It depends on my mood. I mean, the nicest thing is to indeed make a loop, mix your stuff, put everything together, and then just press start, and then you see where it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it depends. I mean, I do also a lot of stuff that I arrange in the computer, or I record a synthesizer, do a riff that I record with filtering, and then build the track over that, or the other way around. There's so many possibilities now. I mean, I have even in Thailand, I did a remix for some people last year, of course, when we could still go to Thailand. And I have a virtual Lindrum, a virtual Moog, a virtual OB. And at home here, I could just switch the sounds for the real ones, which is really cool that you have the same equipment digitally. And then at home, you can just swap them for the real ones. So.
Yeah. Steve, I want to thank you for the remix you did of Kazuya Nagaya, the Japanese ambient producer who's
coming.
Released. That's coming November latest.
I love the album. Amazing album. You guys should check it out if you haven't. If you're into ambient stuff, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Very nice.
Were you always into? I was really surprised. I mean, I had a feeling that you would, enjoy the album and feel the same things that I felt when I listened to it. But were you always into ambient music? That your music was so emotional.
I like spaced out stuff a lot, really. So yeah, and of course warm tones and chordy things. Yeah, that's always my thing. Dreamy stuff. I like dreamy stuff, and that's totally dreamy. And then with the bells and the gongs, it's gorgeous. Love it.
I think that's a perfect word to describe your music. I mean, it's obviously groovy, but it's quite dreamy as well.
I still need a CD copy of that one. Would love
you didn't get it?
No, I didn't get it yet.
You just got the vinyl?
I don't even have the master, I think.
What?
I don't have anything. But I think
we'll talk offline.
The whole COVID thing happened. So
no. We're listening. Popcorn.
I hope my label manager's listening. Marina.
No, but the whole COVID thing happened. So, of course, it probably fell through or got missed.
Hey Steve, what kind of music do you listen to now? Like just listening music?
To be honest, this period now, since I'm into this whole scoring thing, I'm listening a lot to classical music, just to learn how to listen how they play certain things, and especially the volume thing, because that's a hard thing. I mean, if you see these tutorials, how we do it, they would call robotic, because we don't do a lot of movement.
No velocity levels. Yeah.
But if you and now you get it. If you listen and see these tutorials and you do your string thing and it's always the same volume, you're like, oh, indeed. If you listen now, it doesn't live.
Right.
So yeah, I learn a lot. In the COVID period, I'm just learning. Even I can't cook and stuff, but I started making even a whole cooking thing, but mostly Asian and simple Italian things. But yeah, it's nice to. YouTube is in that sense my medium during COVID. I mean, I learn a lot from stuff, just watching movies. And
I'm right there with you, man. I'm the same way.
And how's the vibe, Steve, in Amsterdam, out in the town? It's busy?
Yeah, to be honest, where I live, it's pretty quiet, and I live next to the water. Let's see if you can see a bit still. But and since COVID, it's always been this quiet,
right?
And it's always quiet. So here, I didn't really notice a lot,
right?
Oh,
nice. Sweet!
If I go into
you're in the water, wow!
Yeah, it's really peaceful here.
Which part of town is that?
It's the eastern part of the Docklands side, so the Easter Islands we call them.
Okay.
But you also have the west side, which also has this kind of warehouse area.
Is that where they do the dockyard
Dockyard festival?
I think
is that the opposite?
I think that's on the I'm not sure.
Yeah,
That might be on the west part.
in the west part. Okay.
Gonna have to come and crash at Steve's house.
Yeah, go stay at Steve's house. Go stay by the water.
I can see that new
Hey,
tower.
you Americans keep dreaming leaving your country.
No, we ain't going nowhere.
You're going nowhere.
Stuck
That's
here.
the most depressing thing to just swallow day by day. Is just like, are we even gonna surface out of this?
Yeah.
But you can't leave the house, so you're stuck in the house as well, or
Well,
No.
we're on lockdown here in California.
Hmm.
I mean, we can
No,
leave
not
the
full
house,
lockdown.
but
just
pretty much
shut-
everything's closed except for supermarkets and like
Mhm.
essential things.
No, it's not that much, dude. Like you can go to the beach and go walk on the beach. There's restaurants open that you can eat outside.
You know,
But-
technically, those restaurants are not supposed to be open. They're supposed to be closed, but people have just been staying open anyways.
No. The governor said that if you have outside eating or outside areas, you can technically like that's the people are literally moving their businesses outside.
Right.
Even like they even said that for like hair salons and stuff. They're like, if you have the capacity to go outside and do your hair, you can do it.
Wow.
I'm glad your president still has the capacity to put words in order.
Well, no, that's not the president. That's what the governor of California. This is a state.
No,
level.
I'm talking about your president.
No, he's got no capacity. To
He's
do
still
anything.
able to put words in the right order, right? Kind of.
Yeah, with his cognitive test that he
Yeah.
aced.
But
I don't want to get into that, but
to come back
yeah,
to your story about down here, I mean, yesterday I went through some neighborhoods and it's super busy. You don't feel like anything is going on here.
like, are masks mandatory over there or not really?
In how do you call it? In buses, trams, and things. I don't know if things will change because I heard the rate went up here as well.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
So things might be tightened up again. So yeah, we will see. I mean, I noticed everywhere it's now tightening up again because of more spreading in the last days. I saw.
Are there a
But
lot of
yeah, which was one of the countries that was pretty safe. I heard is going.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of like renegade parties going on in Amsterdam, like illegal parties?
I think just people with private, let's say a private farmhouse or with a big shed, or because we have this thing here, we call it, it's called kliklijn, which basically means you can give your neighbors up if you see something, and that which for me is awful to see because that reminds me of the Second World War when you were giving up the Jews to the Germans. In situations, and I mean this is a scary thing for me that this happens and that people really make use of it. If you would sit in your garden with 10 people and doing a birthday, if
calls the
neighbor
police.
upstairs sees, he might call the police, which is allowed to enter without any ringing door in this how do you call it, Corona time. That's a lot of bad things that are happening here.
So wait, the police can enter without you letting them in. They can just break down your front door and enter.
He's gonna call.
How do you call it? Emergency COVID rule kind of thing.
Yeah.
There are a lot of rules that give the government a lot of power, which, in my opinion, is really scary at points and takes away a lot of freedom.
They did the same here in the States when I don't know if maybe not in the States, but I know in California they did that too. It was like when everything was on lockdown, it was like the governor and the mayor was saying, well, if you see your neighbors or somebody, it's like this if you see something, say something thing.
Yeah.
So if you see your neighbors having a party, you can call the police and the police would come and basically break up.
Happening. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, I heard stories from people that were because you have to do something to make money, and there was a hairdresser and he would invite people to his house, and when the neighbor saw it, he phoned the police and they
lose his license.
took him away. I mean, it's really bad. So some situations feel like that you can really understand how Second World War happened. I mean, I've seen these things around, and it doesn't make you really more happy to see that in that sense, people didn't really learn. I mean, of course, there's a situation going on, but some things go too far for me, in my opinion. We should have learned.
About things going too far, I would, if I may ask, what's your take on what's recently happening with artists changing their names and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a weird thing because all of a sudden we can't use the word black anymore in anything because it's been, yeah, I think it's a bit over the top. I mean, later on we cannot wear even black shirts anymore because it's connected to the word black. I mean, come on.
I won't be able to come out anymore.
But none of the techno guys. I'm not showing up in white.
Steve, growing up, since race relations are at the forefront of dialogue these days and the news and everything like that, like what are your experiences in the music industry specifically? In terms of did you ever feel discriminated against at all over your career or
not at all,
or living in Holland,
Really? I mean, I guess one of the lucky or the easy ones, but I never had any problems with anything. Yeah, in that sense, Holland is an easy country in that sense. I mean, people always say US is the best country in the world for that stuff. No, I don't think so. I think Holland is doing much better in that sense.
No, Mo is shaking his head, and I think justified shaking his head. But just to get quickly back to, I think some stuff is over the top, but some stuff is really justified for some artists to change their names. I think Matt and I agree on one.
Yeah. I had this discussion yesterday as well.
Yeah, I think it needs to be found a middle ground. Obviously, some stuff is going too far, but some stuff is pretty justified, and it's time to think about it. As much as I think it's long overdue that Washington Redskins football team changes their name, I think it's insane that there's still a team that is called like that, or even
that was always a point of contention for
it's
very
been
long
going on for a while.
That's been going on for a long time, but
but it's good that it's finally happening.
Well, like the Cleveland Indians as well.
Their logo mascot.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that sense, because it seems like a snowball effect now happening to a lot of stuff connected to this kind of situation, whether color-wise connected to a name. Indeed, people are rethinking. So in that sense, it creates an awareness that people are rethinking how they use it and what they use as a name. But that is also a good thing, of course, to be aware of what's going on.
Absolutely. I think it's also important for us to keep in mind that everybody being trapped in at home and going through the emotional roller coaster that the entire world is going through is dredging up so many irrational emotions. Yeah. And rational emotions as well. But on either side, you're getting the extremes of both. There are things that are incredibly justified and worth arguing about and bringing up and having discussions about. And there are things that are just absolutely ridiculous that is really blindfolding the world from real problems going on.
Yeah. That happens a lot now in this period.
I mean, the US government is getting away with so much shit because the mass population is focusing on other topics. And at the same time, they're just robbing people from underneath their nose because we're all paying attention. It's like a magic trick. It's like, look what I'm doing here, but the magic trick's back here already.
Everywhere, the same here as well.
Yeah.
I think with the name change thing, I mean, if it's your colleagues, your peers, the industry pushing for you to do the right thing, then you obviously have to take that into account. You have to listen. But if it's these the kind of the troll army, the sofa revolutionaries, who've decided to pick up some new cause to rail against because they have the time, that's another discussion.
Yeah, but that's also, of course, what's happening. Some people just like to spit or like to point or just like to make trouble whenever they can.
I also think
then you're going to even judge Black Asteroid. I mean, although there's no connection with any race in there, but if you really want to look for it, you will find it.
Yeah, it's a It's a weird one. Chris, do we have any good questions from since you're always
sorry. I was not paying attention.
Phased out.
I'm not phased out. I was listening to what you're saying. I didn't check it. I'm really sorry. Sorry, audience.
Like speaking specifically about our industry, do you feel that promoters have a responsibility these days to have a more balanced lineup? Not naming any specific.
Well, in a way, yeah,
should virtual
have a balanced lineup in that sense, and not just because of now.
Yeah, should they have always? Yeah, that's the question. And should they now that the lines of communication are open about these issues?
I think it's a good time to rethink everything.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's happening, and there's a lot of people that think that a lot will change, and that all the fees will go down and blah blah. I mean, I can't really say if that's the truth or if there's any truth in it. But it would be nice if stuff would balance out in a good way again, because I guess it was pretty out of balance here and there. And in that sense, it was maybe also good that something is happening, but no, I can't predict what's going to happen and how we're going to come out of this, what will change.
Yeah, I don't think any of us can predict how we're going to come out of this.
No, but it's so many factors. Even the whole flying thing will probably be connected to it. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things to take in concern.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm obsessed about. Like us DJs, you know, people like Chris and I who play with a lot of gear, you know, it's going to completely alter the way we play, perhaps, you know.
No, but even stuff like the environment. I mean, you see how much it got better with all the flights down and stuff. I mean, it's also something to think about and to regulate that better or whatever to keep a better balance, that the air stays clean. You know, it's but it's all difficult because it's also, of course, our job. But yeah, if you start thinking like this and you see this happening with all the flights down, then it makes you think like, wow, the planet is getting better because of not flying. You know, so.
Did you ever get the feeling prior to COVID that our lives, the way we led our lives and just life in general, it just wasn't sustainable at that level? And especially with respect to our careers and you know, the freedom of you know, movement across borders and the amount of parties and the excesses that went along with all that. Do you feel like this is kind of a reckoning of that time period? You know, like did you feel uneasy about how things
coming back? You mean in this way?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, there's so many things that pop up in your head and where it might go to, and in a way you hope things come back. In another way you hope things change. Yeah, it's so hard to say. I think it's very difficult, and I think it's on a lot of people's minds nowadays. And maybe
like
it was over the top. Yeah, but then again, yeah, we're so used to it. It's our job. We're making people happy, but on the other hand, you're also doing damage. So it's always double in that sense.
I think for everyone, there's a lot of mixed emotions that we're still trying to process.
Totally.
Personally, I'm still kind of leaning on the fact that I hope that somehow, as a community, we start to support local DJs and local music in our individual cities before we start trying to rebuild and really trying to turn this international supermarket of DJs going back and forth all over the place. Because I think it's a healing process on a lot of levels. It gives a lot of new artists and upcoming artists an opportunity to show what they got. And it shows a lot more internal community of your brothers and sisters and the people around you to support each other. And it's kind of the best way I see it for us to re-kickstart our economy before we go back to the way things were.
Yeah. Only, yeah, I think it's per country different, because that's what I had when I had to go to Split a couple of weeks ago. And then you think about it, because we thought also, yeah, it's going to be local, blah, blah, blah. But then you notice the government is not really giving in anything about opening or giving it a chance. So that means that I have to go outside to get it, you know?
Yeah, it's
It's
true.
also it feels a bit double in that sense, that you have to go out to do it while you're even thinking about it should be starting a bit more local.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally going back to Barcelona next month because of how out of control things are in America.
Yeah,
I don't see.
Are you allowed to leave?
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I own property in Barcelona, so and I just got my Spanish residency approved some weeks ago. So my lawyers there think that with those approval letters, I can enter. But
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a completely different situation. I don't think we're leaving this country anytime soon, and I think a lot of American DJs are feeling the pressure of how trapped we are in this country.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, things are just spiraling completely out of control. And every time you turn on the news, you hope for just a little bit of good news, but it just gets fucking worse every day. And you're like, how much further can this go?
I mean,
Like,
it's
how
not
much-
just getting worse. It's becoming like a daily, it's like a new nightmare every day. I mean, when you compare, I just ran the numbers because I was looking up after I read that article about the test kind of show in Germany that they're going to have. Total infections in Germany, 204,000. Total infections in America, 4 million. Total deaths in Germany, 9,000. US total deaths, 145,000. I mean, it's just, it's so off balance.
Many more people, no, as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's
The numbers are big.
340 million people in the US and 80 million people in Germany. So it's
Oh yeah,
it's just 4 times the amount of people, sort of.
But
Or
the
less.
numbers haven't gone down. That's the problem. It's
No,
still
you
going up.
flattened the curve. You flattened the curve right up there.
Up. Yeah, we flattened the curve this way, and you know, in the angles.
So
tilted. Then it's flat.
what's the perspective on America as a country and as a dominant world kind of power from the standpoint of Dutch right now? Like, do you guys look at us with
people? This want to see Trump guy gone and take it from there. That's the opinion, how I feel it here. That no one really has a good feeling about him.
Yeah, I think that people are feeling very sad, Ali, in Europe about America because, like Steve said at the beginning of the show, is that we all grew up on American culture.
Yeah.
Whether it was music, for me, it was skateboarding, BMXing, it was pop art, it was guitaring, it was graffiti, it was so many things, that we absorbed when we were younger. And I think now to see what's happening is, it's really sad, that's the thing, to this country. So
now you turn
all
on
those
now you turn
elements
the news.
all those elements of culture that you speak of is kind of also has always been the anti towards the power of the government, and I think it's always been a result of revolting against the system.
Yeah,
for once I think we're starting to see the system grow much larger in proportion to the other side of it, and it's getting scarier and scarier every single time.
I agree very much with Matt is saying. It's like it's a pretty sad state, and it's really sad to see the decline that you're having at the moment.
Yeah, imagine living in it. I mean, you guys get to watch it like National Geographic from the outside, but like we're like in the bush with the tigers.
But do you guys feel like you're seeing America and Americans for who they've always been, or are you more looking at, okay, it's a reflection of the leaders who are in power right now? Is it a deeper problem, or is it more of, okay, well, it's this Trump guy, and once he's gone and we get someone new, then then there might be hope, or is it a deeper thing? Is it forced you to look deeper in?
It's much deeper.
It's deep, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
If I just, if you look at Trump, he's the result. He's literally the result out of like uncontrolled capitalism. Like if you look how he got rich or how his father got rich in an complete uncontrolled environment with real estate in New York, and that a guy like this growing up in like absolutely with no accountability, with no responsibilities, essentially, and getting to the top is kind of, even if you look in hindsight, a logical progression. So I think what you see is a country full of amazing people that suffer from a system that was just a completely unregulated capitalism that just praises the rich and the famous like insanely. And I think it's kind of, the virus just kind of like punched this through even crazier. And this is what we have to, this is what the world now has to deal with, because it literally, I always, like, it's exactly what Matt was saying. I also grew up with American culture. This is why I'm I have such a love for Los Angeles, especially because I grew up with all these TV series like Rockford Files and Columbo and things like this. It just gives you that feeling like, oh, I love to drive on these big streets but the downside to it was obviously, or is, the uncontrolled, insane capitalism that's going on.
That's a good point, but I'll tell you, it's important to realize for anybody who just wants to use Trump as a scapegoat to blame everything on. I mean, as much as I hate him just as much as anybody else here does, him leaving office and another person coming in isn't going to fix any of the problems. You're basically just trading one controlled system for another controlled system, and
maybe a little less evil system.
I mean,
it's always picking the lesser of multiple evils. But like, I agree with you 100%, Mo. I mean, there's deeper problems than our leaders. But like, electing Trump, I can't reconcile the fact that like, okay, we elected this guy, so what does that say about us? What does that say about America? America elected this guy.
No, you didn't even elect him. Your stupid election system made it possible for him to win, even that he got 3 billion less votes. It's not a democracy you're living in. It's a weird system that is a result out of like crazy, like that idea that once was maybe valid back in like 300-400 years ago with the Electoral College is insane today. And it's just and just the thought of like having 2 senators per state is like, it's insane when you think about it, that North and South Dakota, for whatever reason, there are 2 states, with like what do they have, 100,000 people living in North and South Dakota together? They have 4 senators in the Senate. California, with how many people live in California? 60 million. They have 2 senators. Like, that system needs to be fucking overhauled, doesn't it?
It does.
How are you going to overhaul a system that already works for people who works in their favor? And the people
there we go.
That works in their favor are already benefiting it so much and have so much power.
They don't want to
change. They don't want anything to change.
Nope.
And as a matter of fact, as we all sit here and argue about stupid things that don't really matter, they get away with more, and they like it.
Yeah.
Do you think the people
why are there no protests right now? Why are there no protests right now against that system? You're protesting so much against everything. Why not?
Because we're in a racial protest instead.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's not important.
Something else now.
Yeah, it's not saying that the racial protest is not important. It is important. But I guarantee you that people sitting in office are happy that people are quarreling and fighting each other on the streets over racial issues.
Not about
they get away with murder behind our backs.
Yeah.
By the way, what was the last cool techno record you ever got?
Do you guys like? Do you think that the people that are watching every week, do they like that we veer off? The topic of music. Do they want us to stick to music?
You can actually ask them, and we read the comments.
Well, I'm kind of asking.
Comments. People are like, just stick to the music, guys.
Stick to the music, dude.
You know what, man?
This is
I
like
think a
our
lot of
life
people
now.
are really sick of news, and they're so depressed about everything that's
Yeah.
going on, and they come to things like this to escape. And I get it, and like music is an escape too.
Yeah.
And that makes complete sense. I don't blame anyone for feeling that way. But you know what? There's one really incredible thing about the internet is that as soon as you're tired of hearing about something, you have the power to turn it off.
Yeah.
So like you can stay for the music segment all you want, and then once we get into political thing, you don't like it. There's a ton of other YouTube channels you can go check out.
What do you guys
That's not
think
how the internet
about
works.
what do you think about when you get comments from people whenever you make some sort of a political statement or take a stand on something, somebody tells you to shut the fuck up and stick to DJing or music making?
Tell them to shut the fuck up and go listen to another DJ.
I mean, yeah, literally. You can just, I mean, they could literally just be like, ignore it and move on. You
Yeah.
know, like a person, yes, we are DJs and musicians and producers, but we also have opinions, and this shit's going on whether you like it or not. And we're, you know, people are going to say something about it. And you either agree
Before
or you don't.
musicians and DJs have to put the word human. We are humans.
Yeah, we're still going to get pissed off about something. What, are we supposed to shut up because we just have to make a techno track to make you happy? No.
There's one thing that I've never really fully understood. I mean, throughout my life being on the internet for as long as we've all have been, I've never really found it like a natural inclination or feeling that every time I see something I don't like that I need to comment or say something about it.
No, and I don't.
I mean, I
Especially
don't know. I don't feel compelled to do that. When I hear music I don't like or I see people talking about things I don't like, I just fucking leave.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
just go
exactly.
somewhere else. I don't waste my energy
Exactly.
writing some fucking thesis about what I feel about what people are saying. You know, it's like move on.
All right, let's move on. I have a question from. Sorry, Ali, go on.
No, I was gonna reinforce what Mo said with more. Never mind. You go ahead.
All right. To get back to music, Peter Feck is actually asking a good question here on my, I think it's my Facebook page. And I think that's a good question that Matt can answer because he's been the machine producing at the moment. Are you guys, the question is, are you guys finishing tracks faster during this pandemic time as normal, or are you at the same speed as usually when you produce a track?
I don't know. I've been flying through tracks recently, and I think
You have, yeah,
You're the
right.
machine.
No, but I think I've just got into this mode, and also because the family's here, the kids are actually home at the moment. They're at the kindergarten's on holiday, so it's back to kind of lockdown vibes with the kids here. So I wouldn't say I'm rushing through tracks, but I've now got a system, a good working system in place. So I feel pretty confident that I'm going to get from A to B and not get stuck in in something where I'd sit for hours and so I'm actually starting things and finishing things usually the same day. I think this week I did 2 remixes already. So
Matt, how much is that attributed to your current setup with the Akai controllers?
Yeah, I mean that's completely it. I mean I'm pretty much I'm setting the APC 40 and then the minis out, and I'm not usually working with maybe sometimes more than 24 tracks, but with the remixes I just did, they were like 12 tracks. They were very stripped down.
Yeah.
So if I learn it, if I spend like a few hours and I go away, sit outside, have a drink or whatever, come back, and then I can just literally press start and just do it in one go. And so I'm doing it like that. And actually, it's better as well when I don't do too many edits, like post-production, and just leave it as it was. So it's the same with the remix I did for David. They're both versions I did for his release. They were completely live. There's no edits at all.
Yeah, I was grilling you about that, I remember, because it just felt so, it's like a return to how we used to do things on like an analog mixing desk.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was dicking around with the, for the people out there watching, we all started a track together and everybody's adding one element. So right now we're in 3 elements. We have 3 elements. And I had this Novation launch control that I hooked up yesterday, and I was just kind of, playing around with arranging on the fly that way and just recording what I was doing, assigning different effects to different knobs, and even getting the mix levels right using faders as opposed to, you know, the mouse and pointing and clicking and dragging and moving boxes around for arrangement and things like that. It was a whole different way. For me, it was like I had an epiphany yesterday. I'm like, all right, right now, this is exactly the direction I'm going to go in terms of how I arrange. Because I think for me right now, the hardest thing, it hasn't been like coming up with the ideas or the loops or whatever. It's like sitting down to then arrange.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not finding that inspiration anymore. Primarily, I think because I'm not playing out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think it's just the more live you can make it. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's just, I guess I was so, like you said, I was so used to moving blocks around the screen that I just became so bored of it. I mean, it works when you're doing really sample-based music, like with the Stay Up All Night track I did. I need to do it like that because there's so many edits in the track. It's like, you know, Steve was saying, you know, with the tape editing, you have to go in and cut everything to create these crazy edits. You can't do that with faders, you know, it's impossible unless you're like some turntablist or something. But you know, so but everything else, especially if I'm making more hypnotic stuff, it's lovely with the controllers. I love it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's why you're the one that's going to put our group track together in terms of finding the right loopy hook that you can listen to forever without getting sick of, you know.
Definitely we have Matt as the last stage. By the way, I need to I want to mention that David has a new Truncate release out, which has this amazing Radio Slave remix and a Josh Wink remix of Concentrate, which I totally recommend. Like this EP is.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
we still need Josh on the show, don't we?
Yeah,
you got to get Josh on the show. Yeah.
If he's watching,
probably is. He's gonna be like, "I'll let you know."
I got a remix coming out tomorrow as well.
Hey, please tell us. Let's end the show on a positive note. Let's tell us about what I mean. We know Steve has a remix coming out on your label, Ali, which you haven't sent him the masters, not a vinyl yet. Did I get that right?
Steve has a remix coming out on my label of a Japanese ambient producer named Kazuya Nagaya, and the remix package is going to be a triple vinyl collector's item, colored vinyl set that's going to be released in November. And I'm really happy that Steve loved the project so much to be a part of it. And I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah. And then I have a remix coming out tomorrow on Ilario Alicanti's label. It's a Kevin DeVries and Ilario Alicanti EP. And I did a remix for him that I finished in early March, just prior to the COVID lockdown.
Steve, do you have anything else coming up, out, releases?
I did a remix for Yours Forum, which is going to come out. Gaetano Parisio, I did a remix, which is probably out, one of the old ones.
Yeah.
And I'm working on some remixes now for Joseph Capriati. The coming
Mo.
I have a new Hypoxia. The fourth Hypoxia record comes out on the first Friday of August. My ambient project that I do. I'm releasing this one on cassette tape as opposed to vinyl on the past ones. But it's a really cool package. It's something special I put together. So that comes out on my Bandcamp the first Friday of August. And Luis and I, under our Belief Defect project, just contributed a track to M Division, which is a promoter out of St. Petersburg, Russia. They do the Gamma Festival, kind of an experimental techno festival they do every year. We just did a track for their compilation, which I'm exceptionally proud of that we did and pulled it together. So other than that, it's coming out this week and this month.
Matt, anything else? Machine?
I mean, what's up? I've got another release coming out, a digital release coming out in August. I released like a white label 12-inch last year. It's called Silent Witness. So we're now adding that to records catalog, and also the Served release just came out for the Break the Silence compilation called In the Dark, and the compilation for Black Lives Matter features Rob Hood, KLXE, Eddie Fowlkes, Mark Broom. There's tons of artists on it, so that's a great comp to check out. So yeah, that's about it.
Chris, you've been busy finishing the album.
Yeah, I'm basically kind of in the last steps of finishing the album, but I did this remix for Polly Scattergood, the amazing singer, which was released last week. It's still exclusive on Beatport. Then I did a remix for Nicholas Bugayev, who just releases his album on Mute, and that's probably coming out like next week or in 2 weeks. And I did one for a project that DJ Pierre is doing. What the Strut. You remember that one?
Oh wow! Yeah.
Yeah, and I did the remix for this one, and this probably is going to come out end of August or something. But that's still time to go. I'll tell you about it.
And you just remixed Marco Farioni as well.
When is this going to come out? Too,
No
I
idea.
almost forgot about it. You are the label manager and the label boss, I would say, and you don't know, no?
Not sure.
Did you listen to it? You like it?
I love it. Yeah, it's really good.
Matt,
You like it? Good.
Matt, if Chris turned in something that you didn't like, would you feel comfortable enough to tell him?
I think probably, of course so. Yeah. I think I've known Chris long enough, like I have with all you guys. I think we can all be honest with each other. Yeah.
Great. These are the burning questions, that everybody wants to know.
Yeah, I mean, we just signed an album for a really famous Detroit artist, and I was really, I was sent the album, and I was like thinking, what if I don't like some of the tracks? But every track's amazing. So, but those things do happen sometimes, especially when you work with your heroes.
Yeah.
I'm always because I'm still a sort of fanboy of a lot of people. So I do get worried. I'm thinking, shit, what if I don't like it? So it happens though.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for being a part of the show. It was great to catch up.
Call me again sometime.
For sure.
Did you enjoy to be on our show here?
Yeah, it's nice.
We've never really asked the question to any of our guests before.
It's chill. We're just talking,
I think they all come off the show thinking like, what just happened? And we're like, oh, that was such a great show. It was amazing.
I'm gonna have to join you for some Red Dead Redemption soon, man.
Oh yeah, join in. We go fishing.
That's so funny.
Steve, stay healthy, stay safe, and hopefully we'll reconnect soon in person.
Yeah, hopefully see you guys
Thanks,
soon
Steve.
again.
Cheers, man.
Take it easy.
Yes, guys.
Stay
Take
safe.
care, everybody. Good to see
Who's
you.
our guest next week?
Oh, is it Dean?
I believe we have Dean, right, Matt?
Yeah, Dean Mushin will be joining us, UK manager, and he'll be with us next
He'll be
week,
good.
next
He's a good
Thursday.
guy.
That is going to be very insightful for behind the scenes in the music industry, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're going to learn a lot, Chris. We're all going to learn a lot.
Steve, it was great to see you again. It's been too long.
Yeah. Good to see you guys all.
Yeah,
Stay in touch.
Look forward to seeing you in person again very soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, at least we saw each other New Year's Eve, Dave and Mo.
Yeah.
When I was really sick.
And you were very sick.
Thanks again for standing in for 1 hour.
I stood in for an hour for you. Yeah. Hey, that was great. I didn't have a gig.
I was hoping that we were going to go out and get Korean barbecue again, man, but we didn't make it.
Yeah, he was.
I actually ordered one to the hotel because I was in LA and I had to do at least one. But it was not so nice. Not like where we went.
Yeah. All good, man.
Cheers.
Cool.
Okay, guys.
Bye, guys.
Have a good evening.
Ciao, guys.
Have a good evening,
Ciao.
everyone. Thanks for tuning
Ciao.
in. Tune in again next week. Bye-bye. Oh, Ali left us already. Ali.
Well,
He's got some sourdough, man.
Let's continue the show without Ali now. Oh, Matt left us too.
All right, guys.
Anyways, I'm going to turn it off. Good night, guys.
But,
Bye bye.